Hey everyone, Josh Taylor here from Canine Education. Thank you once again for being part of another episode of our CE podcast. So I wanted to get into a little bit of a different scenario. Obviously, I love giving tips and tricks, and I'm going to continue doing that. Today I wanted to maybe get a little bit into more, I guess, troubleshooting along the lines of how clients think, from my perspective, of course. Some of the things that I think will really kind of help you bring you to that next level up, with your dog, whether it's behavior modification or just obedience in general. Another thing too, I just wanted to say a big thank you. I have premium subscribers already, which I was not expecting. So I just want to thank everyone out there. I really appreciate it. So amazing. It's been kind of surreal just seeing how this podcast is blowing up, at least in my eyes. We're 500 plus downloads. It's just, we have premium subscribers. So what premium subscribers are is that we're going to be having podcasts within the podcasts. So whatever the topic is or whatever we've been talking about, or even the premium subscribers emailing us and wanting me to specifically talk about something or et cetera. This content will be kind of like on the side for those premium subscribers. So like when you're looking at the podcast, you'll see like these premium kind of hidden podcasts. So if I'm talking about pulling, what I talk about in the podcast, I can only talk about so much. Not because I'm hiding anything, but just because of the length of sessions. So I usually have more sessions. But in the premium content, we kind of get more in depth there. I don't really have to worry about how long a podcast is and so on and so forth. So we can really kind of get into, all the different aspects and strategies and scenarios. And to be honest with you, I think a big part of being a dog trainer that a lot of people don't realize is that you are a little bit of a psychologist. And trust me, my life ain't perfect. But as a psychologist, I guess, we're there to coach and reward the person as well. When they're feeling gloom or down, they feel like they can't keep going. We're there to help them. And I'm not saying that that's always the case, and I'm not saying that, I think a good dog trainer is about limitations. I think it's about knowing that we've done everything and when it's time to pull the plug. And there could be, a lot of, I know I'm going to be ruffling some feathers by saying that, but there's so many scenarios that come into my mind. I always assess risk when it comes to different behavior problems. And I think there's a lot of things to look at, like success in general. I've talked about this loosely before. There's so many things to cover on this. It's not just about is my dog not reacting? I also find that we look at prevention as a way to get around the behavior. People find it negative, I don't want to just go the other way all the time. And I just feel like it's very negative. First off, no one said anything about having to do it forever. I know it might feel like forever. But I mean, that's the name of the game when we're dealing with what we're dealing. I know a lot of us, we didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for these problems, but they just happen. And when they do, I think it's important to realize that it takes more than just going outside, working on the game plan, and then calling it a day. I'll give you a good example. Let's pretend your dog is not fantastic at the veterinarian. Okay? So we know our dog is not fantastic at the veterinarian. Now, there are things that you can do to work on that. Okay? But I will have people, and I'm not blaming them. I feel for them. And I have these exact same conversations with them. But they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, another vet appointment. It was really bad this time. They had to do this or they had to do that. They had to hold down my dog or whatever the case. And they're just so down. They're so broken. They're so unmotivated. And at the end of the day, though, I'm saying to myself, like, what did we expect? Did we expect something differently? And people think that magically the dog is going to go in there and maybe this time, maybe it'll be okay. And again, I wish, but it's about practice. It's about hard work. Okay. My son has a very, very difficult time with speech. Okay. He has what they call apraxia, severe apraxia. So he has a difficulty talking, and so, even just trying to express himself can be very, very challenging. Okay. And I'm sure when he looks at his sister or his peers in his class and he notices that difference, I know that he knows that there's different there, right? So it's really about practice. Jet goes to speech. Jet has tutors. I'm sure I could do a better job as well, helping him. But the point is that we need to practice and we need to work on these things. And as you know, well, if you know anything about me so far, you'll know that I kind of always attach that human element into the dogs that I work with, because I think there's a lot of similarities. I mean, at the end of the day, they're sentient, right? Just like us. So, they're with us all the time. They study us. We study them to a degree. They're our best friends. We pet them. They deliver that incredible oxytocin to the brain for us, which make us feel just fantastic. They reduce our stress, for the most part. I know some of you are saying, well, my dog increases my stress level because of the issue. I get that. But, it's that the point is that the benefits outweigh the cons, so to speak. All right. And when your dog is having a problem, it's about understanding, like, okay, what can I do to work on this? And that's why I'm there. I'll give you a good one. Back to that veterinarian. So I just talked about how going to the veterinarian and knowing that my dog is not fantastic, I don't really have many options. Whether, I pop a trazodone or whatever so that my dog is maybe a little bit better. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends, right, on the dog, really. But what if you call your veterinarian and you say, is it possible? Like, am I allowed, or can I go to the clinic with my dog and just go in the lobby for 5 minutes? Or do you have a vacant room that I could go into maybe once every couple of days, so that I can work on my dog's, stress, reactivity, etc. Now I'm not saying to just do this on your own, because there's a lot of things that go into this, but I'm just trying to give you an example of what not looking at a novel scenario as a training scenario, right? Like you need to create it as you need to work on getting that behavior better. So working on it once every 6 months when you have to go in for a vaccination is not the way it's going to be. And, people will say things to me like, oh, well, at the end of the day, it's only once every 6 months. So I guess the dog can, go through that once every 6 months. Is not the end of the world. Sure. Okay, fine. It's not the end of the world. But also we can take that situation and we can think about other situations that we can work on, that we can make those novel scenarios just a little bit easier, where they just don't become so novel at the end of the day, where they start to say like, oh, I know this, or I know what to do here, right? Even just getting your dog to sit and look at you in novel scenarios, it can be challenging, right? So things that are new, or they're somewhere, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what's this? What's that? They're hearing everything. Working on bringing your dog into those areas could be phenomenal for dog training. And it's something that I recommend all the time. Always trying to figure out new, exciting ways to make the uncomfortable comfortable, I guess. Right? So I want you to understand that. Well, I want you to understand a few things. I want you to understand that you're not alone. If you're going through a really rough time with your dog, okay, and it's stressing you, understand that you're not alone. Okay, we're a lot of people are in the same boat. Not that that helps you, but I'm just letting you know. Number 2, think about not necessarily the bad situation, but think about how could you figure out ways to make that situation much less difficult for your dog. So I walk down the street, I see a dog, my dog goes absolutely crazy. It's extremely hard to work on that. Okay, so maybe I'm going to go to a big park where there's lots of dogs, not in the park, but around the park. Maybe I'm going to be at a distance where I'm a football field away where they're looking at the dogs. And you know what? If you tell me, oh, well, my dog won't react from there. Well, you know what? Great job. Because I have tons of dogs who react a football field away. And we work on it and it gets better, of course. But the point is that you need to figure out a system where you can aim for them to succeed, and then you start making it more challenging instead of putting them in the most challenging and difficult scenario you could think of. Okay? I see this every day. And I know why. I don't want my listeners to feel like I'm blaming anyone, but like I'll give you a great example. I'll be with someone and we're working on reactivity. The dog is trigger stacking. I mean, the dog is just, reacting to everything. And they'll say, oh, let's go right up to where the door is, or let's go like right by that person. And it's like, no. We do not want to do that. But I want it to get better. We know. We both want the same thing, I promise. I promise you we both want the same thing. The idea of throwing him into the situation like that is not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create a safe environment where we're using somewhat of a novel scenario, but in a controlled way. If you're right by that door, or you're in a situation where the likelihood of the reaction is to be very high, then you're not doing it correctly. Okay? So it's so important that you focus on, how can I get my dog to win right now? Again, measuring your success comes from intensity. It comes from, and what do I mean by intensity? Intensity in the sense of how my dog reacts at a certain distance from another dog. And does that intensity change over time? Okay. I'm not saying that one day he reacts or she reacts and one day they don't. That's not what I mean. What I mean is 1,500 times of doing it. This is just an example, but 1,500 times of doing it, 1,000 times the dog has lowered the intensity bracket in the sense of seeing that human or seeing a human at that distance, versus the other 400 times it was a very high, heavy reaction. To me, that's progress. Okay. I'm not saying, actually, I would personally say you could absolutely have a journal where you can write these things down. It doesn't have to be like every little detail, but it could be like, I had a bad day, I had a great day, my dog did this, my dog did that. Like, these things can be super, super helpful when you're trying to measure your success. The other thing, aside from intensity, is like recovery. So recovery, so if my dog reacts And then we move on to the next person. Anyone who's taken any of my courses, especially our behavior modification, they'll hear me usually saying things like, just remember, your dog could be, the cup's getting full, or, the dog's overstimulated, or, for your dog, after 3 situations, it's like we've now lost the dog. So the idea is to keep it 2 and under, and obviously using distance. When I'm at a same distance and my dog sees 3 dogs at separate times, and all 3 times are not bad, and then the 4th time we're at the same distance or even further away, and it's like the same kind of, it's like the same kind of situation. Like the dog isn't like overly reactive or anything like the other dog that we're looking at. That is an example of a situation where the recovery is, the dog is overstimulated. So the recovery there is like, okay, I make a mental note, like after 4 dogs, it's really bad. So then as I keep going and I work on this, all of a sudden it's 6 dogs, it's 8 dogs, it's 10 dogs. This is how you get to know how you're doing recovery wise. And recovery might not be that black and white. It might not necessarily be like, oh, my dog didn't react in this situation. It might be little things like my dog is actually taking food now after a certain amount of time versus before, after 5 minutes, my dog wasn't taking anything anymore, and so on, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to like kind of look at these things, but those are 2 big things that we look at. Okay. And one other thing I want to just kind of throw out there, when we have a behavior modification program, you have to get it out of your head that the thing that keeps happening or the thing that we don't like, okay, stop thinking that it's not going to get better, or stop thinking that because that situation keeps happening, we're not progressing. That situation is separate from your behavior modification situation that you're trying to work on. I'll give you a good example. Okay. I have a lot of resource guarders. Okay. So when resource guarders come to me, they will say things to me like, when my dog grabs the pen, okay, or let's say the marker, okay, I have a marker in my hand. So when the dog grabs the marker and I try to go get that marker, the dog will try to bite me. All right. And I will tell them, what about when you have a toy? The dog isn't as bad. Sometimes I'll get, or just as bad or whatever. But what I'll tell them is that when the dog has the toy, I want you to go ahead and take something really yummy and drop it and walk away. And there's a big reason why we do this, but it is of course separate to the pen, right? Because usually when I talk to them about how they're going to gain the trust and fix or manage the behavior, I usually get, yeah, but how do I get the pen? Okay. And so try to understand that you're not really coming to the dog trainer to ask, how do I get the pen back? All right. Really, you want the dog to stop attacking you and reacting when they have something, a pen, etc. Okay. So understand that what we're asking you to do through the modification is to get to the point where you're able to actually grab the pen or whatever the case is. Okay. That is really what the behavior modification is. See, back in the day, I would correct the dog. So what I mean by that is I would probably have the drag leash on and I would leash check the dog or make sure that I overpower the dog to get the pen back. All this does is get my pen back. You think that we just solved the problem because now the dog will do it less when I try and do it. But when my, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, my 12-year-old daughter tries to go and grab the pen or whatever. My daughter's 4, but she wouldn't do that now. So I'm just trying to hypothetically, right? If my 12-year-old daughter goes and grabs the pen, it may be a different story, right? Because the dog is now afraid of me. So therefore I'm able to correct and grab that pen from the dog. All right. And you have to understand that you're just suppressing behavior by doing this. So when it comes to the pen, in a healthy way, what it would look like is you would basically do any kind of act of desperation to just kind of get the pen back, ring the doorbell, redirect, anything at all to basically get the item back. And of course, if it's something, I get this very often, what if it's dangerous? What if it's poisonous? Well, I mean, you have two choices. You get in there and you grab it and probably get bit in the process, or you don't. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. In the grand scheme of things, it will be negative anyways towards you and the dog. So, we're trying to obviously refrain that from happening. So what does that mean? It means that we have to be extra careful. I know, I have kids, I have a life. I totally understand that we will miss things, or we will not see things before, and then it's too late. The dog has already grabbed it. I'm not saying that it's difficult or that it's easy to just not have anything on the ground. Okay. I'm just letting you know that there's more to it than just let's correct the dog when they have the item. Okay. That's what I used to do. And all this would do it gave me the impression that I was fixing the behavior. Absolutely, it gave me the impression. But the reality is that it really didn't. Okay? All it really did was cause the dog to be afraid to do anything around me. Okay? Which just increased the fear. Okay? So this is why when we're looking at true behavior modification, we're looking at ways where we can build the confidence and get the dog to understand that it's okay, that we are not here to try to get that from you. Okay? We need them to feel safe. Okay? It's like we forget sometimes that they're sentient. We forget that they have the same emotions and feelings that we have, right? We can't even use the whole, in the wild anymore. Okay? Because look where we've come. Okay, are we living in the wild? No, everything has changed. And so has the whole background of dogs in general. Domestication and so on has changed so many aspects of this, so all of these things that we look at are super, super different. So it's important to really kind of get that. Sorry, I'm not as cheery as I normally am. I guess this is just a session where, I'm just trying to be a little bit more serious about these kind of things. Like behavior modification is no joke. It's one of the main things that I do. Being your dog trainer and your therapist all in one can be very demanding and difficult. But at the end of the day, I freaking love it. You know why? Because when I'm able to help you and I'm able to get those behaviors, those mini wins, and those mini wins start to stack, and we get into this great place. It's the most amazing feeling. So I'm not complaining. I'm just letting you know that there's a lot more to your dog's behavior than you think. It's not so black and white. So I really hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to do a small little inside kind of premium podcast about this, just to get into it a little bit more. So cepodcast@canineeducation.ca. You can email us, send us anything so that we can help you, or we can talk about, a topic that you're interested in. As for the platform that you listen to the podcast on, it would be such a delight if you could just rate it for me, because this is how I climb the ranks, and this is how I end up reaching more people. I mean, the whole idea, the whole point of the podcast is for me to help more and more people. So I hope you enjoyed the story today. I guess we will call it story time. And again, thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I will see you soon. All right. Bye.